Just off the south coast of England, about 5 miles across the Solent from the coastal cities of Portsmouth and Southampton, lies the Isle of Wight, an island that's home to a rich maritime history, a legendary music festival, gorgeous sea views in every direction, and a little railway line that's unlike anything else in the entirety of Britain. A line that was once part of an entire network of routes, but now stands alone as the last surviving railway in active service on the island. And though it may be just 8.5 miles long from end to end, the charm and personality of this little line, as well as what it represents for the island itself, is limitless and befitting the railway's 140-year-plus history. Welcome to a railway like no other, the Isle of Wight Island Line.
Hello people of the internet, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another station, another mile. And today I'm getting a tube train, but we're not in London.
No, we're on the Isle of Wight, one of the last places to use a tube train above ground.
Yes, there we go. And this is my friend Richard. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thanks.
How long have we known each other?
About 10 years, give or take.
How many times have we met in person?
About once, and that's today.
And that's today, yes. Internet friends, they're great, but you're my local guide for this trip.
Yes, well, you're the train expert. I'm just going to give you general bits of local knowledge and tell you the good stations.
Well, there you go. And I have heard about this little line on the Isle of Wight for so long, not just because it's a tube line, sort of, but not, but just for a myriad of other fascinating reasons, because this is the Isle of Wight Island Line. We've just come from the first station on the northern end, would be the northern end of the line, which is Ryde Pierhead, which is just up there, and it's actually like a sort of jetty.
It is a jetty, exactly.
It's for the ferry terminal. Yeah, well, it's a pier, it's kind of in the name, I guess. And now we're at the first stop southbound, which is Ryde Esplanade, which is the hovercraft terminal.
Yeah, so basically Ryde is one of the joint biggest towns in the island, as well as Newport. So this is probably the first proper station you'd get to.
Yeah.
I'd say. It's basically the bottom of a big hill.
Interestingly, you can very much tell that there used to be two platforms, although one's not really used much anymore, because it's literally now a flower bed. This is Ryde Esplanade. Next stop southbound is Ryde St John's.
That's the one.
So let's head off, shall we?
Now, as we start our journey southbound out of Ryde, let's have a quick rundown of this 8.5 mile route, shall we? The first part of what would become known as the Island Line was opened in 1864 by the Isle of Wight Railway, running from Ryde St John's Road in the north to Shanklin in the south, along the eastern side of the island. An extension further south to Ventnor was opened in 1866, and connecting branch lines to other destinations soon followed. Ryde to Newport in 1875, another line from Sandown to Newport in the same year, and a short branch from Braiding to Bembridge in 1882. By this time, two companies from the mainland, the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway and the London and South Western Railway, had opened a joint line from Ryde Pierhead down to St John's Road to connect with their ferry services from Portsmouth. The line and the island's railways as a whole came under the jurisdiction of the Southern Railway in 1923, and 30 years later the little-used branch to Bembridge was closed in 1953, with the Sandown to Newport line closing 3 years later. But if you followed this series for a while, you should have an idea of what's coming up next in the 1960s. That's right, it's that old Beeching report. And if you think that report did a number on the mainland railway network, wait until you hear this. That report advocated for the closure of every single line on the Isle of Wight. Yep, all of them. If British Railways had got their way, there wouldn't be any railways left open on the island today. However, thanks to the fierce resistance of local residents and politicians, one line was given a stay of execution, the Island Line. Of course, it didn't survive the axe completely unscathed. The route south of Shanklin to Ventnor was closed in 1966, but otherwise the plucky Island Line would live on. The line was electrified in 1967, and aside from new stations opening at Lake in 1987 and Smallbrook Junction in 1991, that's how the Island Line has looked for about the past half-century. Meantime, our own journey was underway, and after a look around Ryde St John's Road station, where the main depot for the island's rolling stock is also located, we headed to Braiding, where the history of the line really starts to show itself.
Okay, so we've come a few stops southbound down the line. We're inland now, and now we're at Braiding, otherwise known as one of the most beautiful stations I think I've ever been to in my life. It is gorgeous.
I mean, what always gets me about Braiding is it's a beautiful station. As you said, it's like a heritage station that's still in use.
Yeah.
But Braiding as a town is a couple of pubs, what used to be a waxworks. It's a through town.
Yeah.
I find it really funny to have a beautiful station like this, which it's probably the highlight of Braiding, to be honest with you.
The station itself, if you come to Braiding, just visit station and then go again. There you go. It's funny you mentioned about how this feels like a stop on a heritage line, because so far the entire Island Line does kind of feel like a heritage railway, not least of all the 1938 tube stock. Of course, for me, it's a novelty to come down and visit for the 1938 stock, but especially given the not very smooth ride on the last section we just had.
Yeah.
What's it like to, obviously you live on the island, what's it like to just use it as a train every day?
You realise that there's no headphones loud enough to drone it out. To be honest, just get used to it. It's like a dodgy bus ride or anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's got its charms. You know the stretch we were going to do, you're going to be thrown around a bit. You don't normally bring hot drinks with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you didn't warn me of any of this, so I nearly got concussed on the window multiple times.
We do have some great footage of this.
I do, yes. There's some amazing footage of this.
I mean, no, you just sit back, you look at the scenery around you, and you enjoy it like a train line, to be honest. I mean, that's the thing. Most people used to an hour, 2 hour long commute. It's a 23-minute ride from one end to the other.
Yeah.
It's not long by any extent.
Between the sort of old buildings, the fact that the line kind of hasn't had a lot of love for quite a while, you can kind of tell that. Plus, very clearly, the evidence of what was more here. This definitely feels like it should have been a heritage railway.
Yeah,
It feels like a heritage railway. It has the period buildings, it has the period stock,
it really does.
to the point that it actually has older stock than the resident heritage railway. It's a beautiful atmosphere. I don't know a mainline, currently operational railway line quite like this.
I think that's why a lot of people come down to it, and why a lot of mainlanders who do come to a holiday in the islands, it's a novelty, it's something nice to get. I completely understand it.
We could be in 1967 right now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, if you ignore the COVID-19 warning poster behind us. Just ignore that. That's a warning from the future. We're in 1967 to warn people. Don't go to 2020. You don't want it.
It's a silly place. Stop now.
But the station itself, very nice.
It is beautiful. So next up, we've got coming towards Sandown and back towards Shanklin Lakeway.
Ooh, are we over halfway down the line already?
Yeah, about 60%.
Nice. Okay, well, let's keep going.
Aye.
Now, at this point, I'm sure you're all wondering when I'm going to address the elephant in the room. AJ, why aren't there old London Underground tube trains running around on the Isle of Wight? I wasn't aware of this extension of the Piccadilly line. Well, here's the thing. The loading gauge on the Island Line was always on the small side, with the main pinch point being the Ryde Tunnel just south of Ryde Esplanade Station. Even in steam days, only small tank engines and suburban coaching stock could operate on the line. But when the line was threatened with closure in the 1960s, one condition of it being kept open was that the line would be electrified, and that included remedial work in Ryde Tunnel to raise the track bed to prevent flooding. So now the loading gauge of the line was even smaller, and at the time there were no electric multiple unit trains around that could fit the very small bill. However, it just so happened that around the same time, London Transport were phasing out their 1923 stock tube trains from service. And given they were built to work deep-level tube lines, they fitted onto the Island Line no problem at all. Thus began a tradition of old London Underground trains working the Island Line, one that has continued ever since. The 1923 stock trains worked the line from 1967 all the way to 1992, by which point they were pushing nearly 70 years old. And as for the new trains introduced in 1989, they were old 1938 stock tube trains, already pushing 50 years in service before they even arrived on the island, and still going strong at 82 years old as of the recording of this video. They were at last retired in January 2021, and it was knowing full well that these old units would be going away soon that made me want to visit the island when I did in the first place, and I'm so happy that I did, even if the ride was a bit bumpy at times. I give up, it's hopeless. Anyway, onwards we went to Shanklin, the southern terminus of the Island Line and the site of my overnight stay.
So this is it, the end of the line.
Yes, it is. We're at Shanklin, the southern terminus of the Island Line, although it once was not.
No, there's a good 2 stops after this, carrying on straight through to Vauxhall.
Yep.
If you carry on just down that way, you go across the road, you'll be back in the old railway line.
Yep,
and then
which
straight
is
down
now-
to Ventnor.
Which is now, as a lot of old railway lines are, now a cycle path. And Ventnor, I mean, there's not much to see there now, right?
No, Ventnor's lovely.
Oh,
Ventnor's
the Ventnor
great.
itself
Ventnor's-
is lovely,
Oh,
but
yeah.
the station.
Oh, the station is non-existent. The biggest thing about Ventnor Station now is the tunnel. This is used to collect the water for the town.
Ah, so the tunnels still exist, but you probably shouldn't go in them.
We couldn't go in it, no.
No, probably for the best. It's appropriate because almost every stop on this line has hints of a much grander past to it. The former second platform is now a flower bed with a random sailing boat in it
Yeah.
because we're on the coast, I guess.
Can't let anyone forget that.
Yeah. I mean, you're never 20 minutes from the coast on the island anyway.
Never 20 minutes from anywhere on the island.
Fair. So this is Shanklin. This is the end of the line for today. So thank you for joining us today,
It's
Rich.
been a pleasure.
It's good to meet you at last after 10 years of internet friendship.
Yes.
Meantime, do you want a beer?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go. Good morning, folks. It's your boy, back at it again. I'm back at Shanklin Station after a very nice overnight stay. I am back at Shanklin, waiting for my train back northbound. We're going to slowly work our way back northbound, stopping off for stations that we didn't quite get a chance to look around that much yesterday. With the benefit of having overnight to kind of sleep on and think about my first impressions of the Island Line, I really have a kind of feeling of quaint defiance. We've established throughout that almost every station here is carrying some sort of long-lost secret. Even here at Shanklin, clearly there was 2 platforms. You can see the second platform is now just an overgrown flower bed. Any vestiges of the old subway that used to carry passengers, you walk down the steps, go under to the other platform, that's long gone. And of course, we talked about how it used to continue going that way towards Ventnor. In amongst it all, there's a sort of quiet defiance about this line, not least of all by the fact that there's a lovely bit of art over there which says "Welcome to Shanklin" with a painting of the Island Line train and a steam train on it, and there's little notes on it that just say "not dead yet." So there's a quote from my favourite James Bond film of all time, which is, if you're curious to know, GoldenEye, and he says something along the lines of, "Why won't you just be a good boy and die?"
Why can't you just be a good boy and die? You first.
And the Island Line kind of feels a bit like that. It has that energy to it in that all the rail services on the line, on the island I should say, were cut to the bone in the 60s. Clearly, investment has never been a priority for this region in terms of rail structures. I mean, they're using trains literally from pre-World War II. So you've got these old, faded, clunky, bumpy trains visiting stations which have been cut down to one platform at the very, very most, just about seeming to cling on to survival. People almost wonder how the hell is it still going. But here it is. It is still here, in spite of everything. In the 60s, they wanted, if they could have just shut everything on the Isle of Wight in terms of railways, they just would have done. They just left this open just to sort of wither on the vine and die. But it hasn't. It's still here. I've said time and again, this line feels like a heritage line, even though it isn't. And I kind of think that energy should stay. It's very fitting that it has that energy to it. But either way, I am just kind of grateful that it's here. I love the fact that it exists. And I say that quite a lot in this series, don't I? I love the fact that it even exists to begin with. Anyway, it's about time I stop rambling and go get my train.
Our second day on the Island Line would focus on the stations we didn't really get a chance to look at in great detail on the first day. And the first of those, heading back northbound, would be the newest station on the line, Lake, opened in 1987. And what does the newest, most modern station on the island boast in terms of features? Not much, really.
Okay, so we've left Shanklin and we're now at the first stop on the Island Line going northbound from the Shanklin end, which is Lake. And there's nothing here. You know, when we came through here yesterday, Richard said, you know, you probably don't have to bother with actually filming anything at Lake Station because there is nothing here. It's just a platform and that. I mean, he wasn't wrong. It's literally one platform, a fence, a help point, which I'm not sure even works, this bus shelter, which looks like it's come straight from South London in 1985, and that's it. There's no benches, there's nothing. No, wait, correction. There is one other thing. There's the Jeff Marshall Special Fluttery Bin, which I'm actually using as the stand for my camera right now. I think even Jeff Marshall would go, like, look, by my standards of least used station, I mean, this is pretty barren. And I think it's appropriate, therefore, that this, for a time, was the most modern station on the line. Because of course it was. This station was opened by British Rail in 1987. You know, compare it to all the other stations on the line which were opened in the 1860s or so. You know, these lovely ornate structures, they've been slimmed down, but they're still lovely and sort of quaint. This is just, here's a platform. Is that it? That's a station, isn't it? What's a station? A place you get on and off the train. Can you get on and off the train here? Yes. Well, there you go. But don't think I've seen many more barren stations in my life. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in all the wrong ways. Not least of all, the station's called Lake. There is no lake here. There's the Sandown Bay Beach not far from here, and I think there is a Lake Gardens residential area. But that's it. It's a station named after something that isn't here, with a platform, and that's it. I take you to all the glamorous spots on this show, I've got to say. Anyway, I've got about 20 minutes to kill here, and I really don't know how I'm going to do that. Once the next train comes through, let's keep going northbound, shall we? Where hopefully there'll be a bit more to actually see. So we're back once again at Sandown Station, and what's this? 2 platforms? Yes, this is one of the few stations on the Island Line that actually still has 2 platforms. And interestingly, it still had some platforms closed down. You see here, it used to be a junction station for another branch line that headed westbound across the island towards Newport, which is where the Isle of Wight Festival is held. There used to be, and you can clearly see there's space and some extra track over here, which is probably where the junction would have been in the extra platforms, but now there's only 2 platform faces. The fact that this is one of the few places where trains can actually pass means that the timetable has to be run slightly staggered. They can't run trains every half an hour in each direction because they can't get past each other on the loops in the station, so they have to be timed. So they run every 20 minutes, then 40 minutes, then 20 minutes, then 40 minutes. It's a lovely little station, you know. If you didn't know where we were, it does feel like a classic Southern region, Southern Railways type station. And of course the Isle of Wight would have been in the old Southern Railways, Southern region era in the grouping of 1923 to 1948 and then through British Railways after that. So there is a heavy Southern region influence. Not least of all the fact that there's a lot of green around the station, so there you go. But it's a nice little station. I like it very much. And it's just starting to cloud over a bit. We're doing all right with the weather so far. Let's hope it holds a little bit longer. Anyway, let's continue northbound.
By the time you watch this video, the old 1938 stock units will finally be no more, and the line will have finally enjoyed some long overdue investment and upgrades. More on that in a future video, but regardless of what comes next, the old trains leave a great deal of nostalgia and fondness behind them. For many, part of the unique charm of the Island Line were these vintage trains. Nowhere else in the country could you ride heritage tube trains full stop, let alone in active service, on an incredibly charming little line. And yes, they may have been old, rusty, rattly, and very, very bumpy, but boy did people love them nonetheless, including me. Ultimately, they came to reflect the line as a whole. They were survivors. Many consider them a relic of the past, long overdue for being put out to pasture, but they just kept soldiering on. And all of that is also true of the line that they called home for so long. A line which should have been wiped off the map in 1966, just like every other line on the island, but survived. A line that has defiantly kept operating no matter how many have questioned whether it should still exist. And a line which has quietly won over the hearts of many through sheer persistence and charm. And one of those hearts is most definitely mine.
So there you go, folks. We're back at Ryde Pierhead. One complete trip down and back up the Isle of Wight Island line. And to say I've been looking forward to visiting this place for a long time would be a bit of an understatement. And friends, I can say with complete conviction, it's lived up to expectations. I have fallen a bit in love with this line over the last few days. It's lovely. But is that my time on the Isle of Wight done? You see, there's one station we've not really mentioned much on the Isle of Wight Island line. That's Smallbrook Junction. So what I'm now going to do is go there and show you the other interesting historic railway line on the Isle of Wight. But until next time, I'll see you guys soon along the way.